Colleen Yates, and I'm the CEO of Regional Development Australia Perth here in sunny Western Australia. Now, I know over the past few programs here on RDA TV, we've spoken quite a bit about lithium and with the publication of our report, Lithium Valley, but it's also now taken us into some other really interesting areas around energy futures. And one of those areas that's come across our desk is hydrogen. So there's been a lot of things that have been happening in hydrogen, and both hydrogen and the battery technology and lithium futures and all of that are all happening, because of very certain reasons. There is also a lot of work that's been done at the national and the state level regarding hydrogen. So there is now a national strategy in place around hydrogen, and the state has just released a strategy on hydrogen renewable futures. So you've got to ask, why is there this big, huge push in terms of producing more battery technology, looking at hydrogen? And a lot of it has to do from our investigations around emissions. Okay, so for instance, in the EU, there's a huge push to reduce, for instance, within the shipping industry, particulates out of the environment, and pushing car companies over to more battery technology. And both of these events are actually coming together on July 1st, 2020. So in the shipping industry, for instance, ships are powered by something called bunker fuel. And bunker fuel is a very, very, very dirty, low-class form of petroleum. And it produces a lot of particulates and things that aren't good for the atmosphere, and is contributing to around 400,000 deaths per year in terms of the global population. So interestingly, the whole push in terms of cleaning up bunker fuels within the shipping industry is about health. So on January 1st, 2020, all emissions coming off of ships are going to have to be reduced down to 0.05%. And then a little bit later from that, they will have to be reduced to 0.01%. This has a huge, huge impact on shipping. There are around 52,000 ships on the open oceans, transferring cargo, moving cars, creating to our world economy. And so they're pretty much in a scramble right now to try and find some alternatives in terms of how do they deal with this particular issue. So in the first instance, they're looking at scrubbers, which are things that they'll put on the ships to try and clean up the emissions coming off the ships. But they're also starting to look at all the alternatives in terms of moving away from bunker fuels into other products that are cleaner for the environment. And some of these things include LNG, so they're looking at not only ships that transport LNG, but looking at ships that will be powered by LNG. And with that, there's also the look at hydrogen. And the reason hydrogen is being looked at alongside lithium battery technology is that currently battery technology can only go short distances. We can't go the distance with lithium, or at least not yet until we develop the technology. But within the shipping industry, because there's such vast distances, hydrogen happens to be one of those technologies that will be able to fuel the future. So on this program of RDA TV, what we would like to do is maybe investigate a little bit, what is this hydrogen story? I've already said where it's coming from, but what does it mean for Western Australia? Do people understand what this future is, and how does battery technology and hydrogen technology come together to fuel our future? I just want to cut now to a conversation that we had with Michael Worthington of 101 Media Group around this fantastic technology.
Hi and welcome to the show. Well, it's an exciting show. I've got Colleen Yates, the CEO of RDA Perth, and we're talking everything hydrogen. How are you, Colleen?
I'm doing really well, Michael. Hydrogen.
I know. Thanks for making the time. Hydrogen, I guess to start off with, there must be some misconceptions. Hydrogen's been around for a while for hydrogen power, but I think there's a few people got misconceptions that it's perhaps dangerous, that's why we haven't used it, we've pushed it onto the back shelf. Could you perhaps clear that up for us on what actually these hydrogen cells are and what they're doing, and if they're safe or dangerous?
Well, hydrogen cells are another form of energy storage, and yes, hydrogen has been around quite a while. And the misconception that it's dangerous, I think, is interesting, because we have had trials for quite some time around hydrogen buses, and so the technology's there. It just hasn't. There's really been no problems. I think it's more about the efficiencies of being able to fit it into the types of equipment and cars and ships and all these things that are looking at hydrogen. So it's more about efficiencies than it is about any dangers associated with hydrogen.
You talk about efficiencies, and I guess a lot of us, we've looked at the electric cars and the lithium cars, and we're in Western Australia, so we have big distances. And one of the cars may be great around the city, and we've got a few in the city now. Well, for us, a short trek down the road is 1,000 kilometres, and welcome to Western Australia. Lithium just doesn't cut it at the moment. It just can't do it. Does hydrogen address this, or has that got the same restrictions as well?
Yes, the beautiful thing about hydrogen, it does have and will have an increased capacity to actually go the distance. So, and that's why, for instance, the initiative Hydrogen Highway, looking at a route from Perth all the way to Port Hedland to trial trucks for that heavy haulage.
For the heavy haulage?
Yes. So basically, it's not about cars. It's basically about being able to transport goods a long distance using hydrogen. This is also happening within the shipping industry. So I've mentioned recently that there's some new emission controls that are happening globally out of the Maritime Organization, and they're basically putting more restrictions on the particulates that are being emitted by ships, because ships use bunker fuels.
I was going to say, ships use a really crude, very unprocessed, it's just
viscous.
Horrible. It's horrible, isn't it? And they pump a lot of actual contaminants into the air. But it's not just efficiencies driving the ships. I was quite interested. We're talking off air, and you're saying there's another factor in play that's actually driving this shift as well.
The World Health Organization.
Incredible.
Okay, so everybody thinks, oh, all of this stuff is happening because there's environmentalists and it's about, carbon. That's only part of the story. The amount of, using petroleum products, we're pushing so much pollution into the atmosphere that it's actually impacting on populations around the globe. So not so much for Australia, because we're kind of down south.
Yeah, we're kind of at the end of the chain.
Yeah, but there's a belt around the equator, that is actually, there's quite a bit of an effect from the particulates in this area, and so it's attributing to premature deaths, around 400,000 per year, and that's expected by 2025 to go up to about 552,000 deaths per year. And this is even with the new emissions changes that are being put into place.
Now, just as, and I know it might sound like a bit of a naive question to someone coming from the outside, but they've proven lithium batteries. Why can't we just put them in ships and solve the problem today? Why are they now starting to experiment with hydrogen?
Well, in order to go the distance, you will need a lot of batteries. So most of the ships on the seas are cargo ships, keeping our economy going. So there wouldn't be much room for the cargo at this point
batteries.
with the current technology. So, this may change, because there's a whole new area being looked at in terms of lithium metal, making lithium metal, which is much more lighter weight, and which might drive the technology in terms of changing that battery technology. The other thing is that to re-energize the batteries, there's some options that they've been looking at in terms of solar technology on ships to do that, so you can have fewer batteries but continually renew the batteries on the ships. It's still all fairly early days, but in terms of being able to meet the new emission challenges that the shipping industry is faced with, they're looking at converting ships to LNG and also they're looking at hydrogen.
And hydrogen, wow. With hydrogen, we talk about the restrictions, we've talked about the distance, like for the trucks here in Western Australia. Can you give an idea, just for the overseas viewers, how far that is, how long that hydrogen highway is?
Oh my goodness.
It's not a few hundred K, is it?
No, it's a couple thousand.
It's a couple of thousand kilometres.
Yeah, I've taken the trip up myself with my kids, and it took 3 days. 3 days driving to get up to Port Hedland.
Here comes the hydrogen highway into Western Australia. How does hydrogen work then? How does it recharge? We have the restrictions with the lithium batteries. We need to get the power stations to recharge them, or at least generate electricity for them, or solar. How does hydrogen work? Why is it getting bigger distances?
It's basically a very clean process.
Right.
So it's and I'm not a technical person. I don't know all the little details of exactly how it works. A little bit like lithium batteries. I leave that up to the scientists.
Absolutely.
But the evidence looks really good. But it basically takes hydrogen and converts it into an energy form, and the emissions coming off of that is water.
Aha, so this is why we've had a couple of buses, and you mentioned this earlier, especially in Perth, hydrogen buses, and out of the exhaust, well, what would traditionally be the exhaust, it is just water.
That's correct.
Coming out of it.
So it's you know, as chemists understand much better than I do, you know, it's breaking up the hydrogen out of the oxygen.
Yes.
And leaving water.
Yeah. Incredible. Now, you've been doing a fair bit, and you're giving a few talks on this and just updating people on what is happening and why, like the World Health Organization you mentioned there. How do you see it progressing? How fast do you see this moving in? You're kind of at the front. I mean, you're maybe off to America shortly to give the talk there. How fast is this coming in, do you think, Colleen?
It's massively huge. It's, for instance, with electric vehicles. There's within the EU there is another emissions target, again set for January 1st, 2020, in less than 6 months. And what that emission target is saying is that 95% of new fleets manufactured in the EU must meet these new emission targets, or the auto manufacturers will be fined. Okay? So, for instance, how that's being translated for a company like Volkswagen.
Yes.
They're scrambling really hard to create electric vehicles because of this target. And so they will be fined because they won't be able to do it as of January 1st, 2020. They will not have 95% of their fleets converted to this new emissions target. So they're going to be fined around $9.19 billion for 2020.
Wow.
Alone, okay? So what's, you know, and with the EU, which we've already spoken about, they realize they don't have the critical raw materials, you know, for a number of reasons. Either they don't have the resource, or they may have social and environmental barriers in place that won't allow them to mine for it. So they don't have the critical raw materials, so they have to rely on China. And so they're scrambling to create those JVs with China, because China, Japan, and Korea are the only companies that manufacture battery cells at a scale that will be able to service, for instance, an electric vehicle market. So within those negotiations, Volkswagen, for instance, well, there's over $300 billion being invested into the EV market by 2025 because of these emission targets, because 95% they have to meet by January 1st, 2020, but 100% of new fleets manufactured in the EU must meet those targets as well. So huge push for EVs, huge push for hydrogen in order to meet these emission targets. So we've got pressure on the shipping industry to meet new targets. We've got pressure on the automotive industry to meet new targets. And China, Japan, and Korea are sitting quite pretty in terms of the fact that they are the battery cell manufacturers, especially China.
Yeah.
But in those negotiations, what's really interesting when you look at the figures, over 50% of that $300 billion of investment to 2025 will be made directly into China.
Whoa. That will please the Americans. They're trying to stop that.
It's an interesting situation,
Yes.
because there's a lot of the stuff that's going on between the U.S. and China. China does have, or has been stockpiling a lot of the resources in order to meet these markets. So what RDA Perth has been saying to both the EU and to the U.S. is, you guys, you need to actually come, to Western Australia. You need to look at upfront investment into the mining companies. You need to look at offtake agreements. You need to look at a whole range of things that you're not used to normally doing if you're going to secure your critical raw materials.
Because West Australia, we've actually got with Lithium Valley, and I know you've done the report on all this, we've actually got the raw materials in abundance here in Western Australia.
We do. We are the periodic table of energy metals. And recently, a very high-level retired military gentleman was here in Western Australia as a keynote speaker at the Australian-American Leadership Dialogue. And I was so happy to hear what he had to say. He got up and he said, look, Australia and Western Australia has the resource that the world wants to buy. Okay, so we're in a really great position, but we need to be smart. We actually need to look at how we leverage those resources, and we stop breaking big rocks into little rocks. We look at how do we leverage those resources to get investment into Australia and into Western Australia that will drive the new jobs into the future. And it's coming to a little bit of a critical crunch here because of these emission targets, for instance, with the EU, the shipping, emissions targets, the impact on the petroleum industry is absolutely massive, because they're going to have to convert the refineries over to cleaner fuels. So we're in a bit of a scramble, and I'm waiting to see what is going to happen with goods that are being shipped on cargo ships, and how the impact of the cost of cleaner fuels are going to have on the cost of those goods shipped.
You mentioned about other companies overseas coming for the lithium and investing and getting into that sector. With the hydrogen highway, that you've also been heavily, over the top of this thing as well. Do you see foreign companies bringing their trucking, like when they do their prototype models here, and using that as a highway to test? Is there anything going on in this space?
With Innovate Australia, that was their whole purpose of establishing hydrogen highway. So
that's Peter Kasparek.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And you get him in the room, and he gets very excited about talking about these things. But they've been the driver between hydrogen highway, and so his intent was hoping to get some of this new technology. So there's a company in the U.S. called Nikola,
right?
That is focusing on hydrogen. So Tesla's focusing on batteries, and Nikola is focusing on hydrogen.
They should get married.
So, the ships that are being produced, or not the ships, but the trucks and haulage vehicles that are being produced by Nikola is basically all around that hydrogen technology. So, it's not who's going to win first, between hydrogen and battery technology. I think we're going to have a suite of new energy storage systems that are going to be a combination of both.
Wow, absolutely fascinating. I am conscious of time. Colleen, thank you so much for joining us. Hey, and make sure you check out RDA Television on YouTube. We'll put the link underneath.
Yep, do that, and don't forget to subscribe.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Michael. And as you would have noticed, Peter Kasparek from Innovate Australia was mentioned around the Hydrogen Highway Initiative. So let's maybe revisit exactly what that conversation was about. I'm Colleen Yates, and I'm the CEO of Regional Development Australia Perth, and welcome again to our show. And we have Peter Kasprick back again, as you guys might remember Peter from a previous conversation, and he's the CEO of Innovate Australia. Now, Peter.
Yes.
The Hydrogen Highway.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, we actually just finished the event on the Hydrogen Highway. We're excited about the project. So Hydrogen Highway is it's a brainchild of Hydrogen Society of Australia, and Hydrogen Society of Australia is initiative of Innovate Australia. So with Hydrogen Highway, the idea is to create a network of hydrogen refueling stations. And the network actually, we're only talking in this case about 5 stations, and this is from Perth to Port Hedland, and this is along Highway 95, National Highway 95. And the idea for that is actually to designate this for heavy transport. And reason for heavy transport, why we focus on that? Because there are hydrogen highways in California, in Norway, in Japan, in Germany. So basically our existing networks. We don't in Australia. In Australia, at this moment, as we're recording this, we have 3 cars in the whole continent, hydrogen vehicles. And we got 1 station, which is not even stationary station, is a truck used as a refueling station. But that's okay, that will change very quickly. So the idea actually for focusing on heavy transport is to create scale, create demand, to give people idea. A car, roughly, a hydrogen car takes about 5 kilo of hydrogen, roughly can drive on it about 500 kilometers. So for average person might be a week. A truck takes 20 times more, roughly. It takes about 100 kilo of hydrogen and can use that in 3 days, less than 3 days, let's say. So huge difference. Okay, so definitely, you can create a scale very quickly doing that. Yeah.
So why this road in particular? Why pick this road?
Okay, that's our main road here, actually connecting Perth to Port Hedland, so our northern to Karratha as well, etc. But basically going through Pilbara. Pilbara already has a lot of initiatives. Okay, when it comes to hydrogen, when it comes to ammonia, there are projects there. There are many solar projects actually in the area, and also in the future. I mean, there's our mining region. So there is a numerous mine actually in Pilbara region. So the idea is for the trucks actually to supply mines. They also we were just talking about it because there's a lot of talk about using hydrogen fuel cells in the vehicles that actually the big haulback trucks that driving inside mines. And the idea for that is so our truck's gonna be like advocates for the idea of hydrogen. They'll be driving salesmen, because once people realize the advantages of it. And financial advantages because it's going to be less expensive actually to drive than diesel, and health advantages huge, and all our minds very focused on safety as well. So definitely, that's the main reason for the route.
So how does hydrogen work?
Okay, so a lot of people think hydrogen actually. Basically, we're pouring hydrogen inside, but hydrogen itself, I was showing an example, you can make it very easily. You just literally can take 2 nails and stick in a glass of water and put a little battery in it and attach the battery to 2 wires, and you're going to see that all of a sudden it's that bubbling. So, you're going to have bubbles on one side, bubbles on the other side. That's how simple it is. If you want to catch it, just take a glass upside down, 2 cups, and you can catch hydrogen. That's how it is. Yeah. So what's happening in the vehicle, it's actually the vehicles, opposite. The vehicles actually have what is called fuel cell, which is sort of like a pancake, a stack of metal material. Yeah? And when you add hydrogen to it, opposite happens. You put hydrogen, it takes oxygen from the air and joins them together. In the process of joining, electrons come out. Like before, you were putting butter, so you were making, you were putting electricity. Now electricity comes out, and the water comes out. So that's it. So that's the vehicles do have exhaust pipe, but the only thing comes out is pure water. Literally, you can make yourself a nice cup of tea and you can drink it straight. It's a pure water. So it's huge advantages. So because it's so simple, really. I mean, I'm sort of oversimplifying here because in industrial scale, it's hydrogen is made a little bit differently. It's called steam reforming. So basically, you take a gas, natural gas, let's say, and you can add high pressure and extremely high temperature steam, and you join them together. What comes out is hydrogen. Problem is, in the process, you get a lot of CO2. Okay, so a lot of companies, actually gas companies, working on capture and storage of CO2. So it's not my personal favorite, but because the idea is you actually can do hydrogen actually using renewable resources.
So some people have the perception that using hydrogen is volatile or dangerous, but it seems it's been around for some time. So what would you say to someone who would go, isn't it dangerous?
Yeah, it's funny because that's still we have this perception, and for two reasons. One, people usually first thing that comes to people's mind when they hear hydrogen, its second word is bomb. So nothing to do with this, but it's absolutely true. That's what people think, so that's one. And the second thing is that probably older, people like me, when they think hydrogen, they think about Hindenburg. Both of these total fallacies. Okay, so
both blew up.
Yeah, but in Hindenburg actually was actually the oxide was the paint that actually was outside that's what was burning. Okay, hydrogen. There was a fantastic safety video on YouTube, very short, couple minutes, and actually shows. They purposely punched the tank hydrogen in the car. It's at the back, and hydrogen being solar is the lightest element. It's number one on the table. Yeah, so it comes out directly and it basically just escapes. It doesn't go left, right. So that for comparison, they actually show when you have do the same thing to a normal tank, the car that you're driving, the gasoline goes all over the place, or petrol, goes all over the place. And so that's why you got lingering fires. The whole car can catch fire. With hydrogen, no, it just goes directly, escapes. There's another very short video also showing you when they shot the hydrogen tank, which is made from carbon basically, and they're very safe. And they shot the tank and just with huge 50 caliber, and just nothing happened out of that. Okay, so just simply hydrogen just dissipates. Look, it's extremely safe when it comes to usage. And like everything, there's misconception. There's still hard because when we have events, people still think that ask the same questions.
So are you getting a lot of support in terms of the hydrogen highway concept?
We're getting fantastic. So this is frankly, it just I don't want to say too much, but it's just that's a little bit my fault, just because talking, I get enthusiastic about it. So I talk
enthusiastic.
I talk to anybody who will listen, and even to those who don't want to listen, I still talk to them. So I'm so just like. People move, look at, but look, the idea is because we get so many inquiries now. I'm on LinkedIn. I get quite a few. I get probably over 700 links just for hydrogen with different people all over the world. So even answering one email, and I just look at my clean up the email over the weekend. It's almost there, and then go 200 something again, so it's really, and a lot of it is not like a grow more hair, but most of it is actually like people asking questions, and just but frankly, we do have a lot of support. Senator Linda Reynolds, who was here, very good, great supporter, and now her being member of cabinet is really good for us, because he's pushing in federal. It's Peter Klinken, our chief scientist of Australia, Dr. Alan Finkel as well. We corresponded with him. We have meetings lined up with NERA and ARENA, so the two agencies actually that very interested in in this project. So we're working right now developing short animation just to it's easy for some people. Easier for some people to talk when the light is on, but some people feel good when the light is off. So yes. So, but that's okay.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. See?
Okay, well, thank you for coming on our show again.
Absolutely.
And talking about the hydrogen highway. And look forward to seeing this project move forward.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
I appreciate
and
it.
to all of our people out there, don't forget to hit subscribe. Thank you.
Peter, Colleen, what a great interview with the Hydrogen Highway. Peter, Innovate Australia, how do you assess? Someone's looking at you and going, geez, you're doing the Lithium Valley, you do all this innovation. How do you assess as an organisation what you think is going to be the next best thing that you should be exploring and exposing WA to?
Look, I think, I personally like to keep in touch.
I think someone's going to dim the lights on you, Peter.
Yeah, but that's very attractive, actually. We can, we still have 2 minutes, so that's.
No, you can't. It's on the plug.
We're back.
We're back. Okay. Yes. No, so look, I'm very interested in technology and innovation. So that's why we're running Innovate Australia, and very often, with the interaction with people, we actually. People say, "Oh, that would be fantastic." Give you a great example. We had an event. We had summit, which we organized together with Regional Development Australia, with Colleen. We had summit on the topic was women of agribusiness. Okay, and so we thought women of agribusiness probably don't get that much recognition, so let's organize. After that summit, actually, one of the women, Mary Nenke, she runs Yabi Farm in Cochrane, and she actually was the one who raised the issue. Said regional telecommunications. She said it's really stifling development of agriculture, agribusiness. So we thought, okay, and Linda was there actually. Colleen was there. So we thought, okay, why don't we just do event in the country? We never done it, and so that's how this was born. Again, suggestion from somebody from actually our panel, and so that was a great adventure because we hire a big bus. We when it's 3.5 hours actually driving from Perth, so we had really nice bus from Adams, so and it was a really great experience and actually was very useful for people in the country as well.
For both you, Peter and Colleen, a lot of people would say West Australia is going to be the toughest place to do innovation in. How would you respond to that generalised comment?
I don't see it as the toughest place to do innovation in. I think we don't toot our horn enough. I think we've got a lot of innovation that exists here in WA, but we're very quiet about how we promote what we've got. So, that's, I think, part of the role that both RDA and I know Innovate Australia, we both are trying to toot the horn a little bit for WA, to actually try and get better recognized in terms. And if we can get more attention on the innovation and the companies, then the likelihood of them staying here in WA will be greater.
Yeah, I actually just want to say, look, there are a couple, probably the best known place, SpaceCube, which is the oldest, actually, Brodie McCulloch, who actually started the place, and but now it grew into flax and core, etc. So that's our sort of like great center. There are other people. Peter Rosdeutsche, very active, used to run Tech Hub now. So there are a number of places actually in Perth that actually doing something really good. And no, I wouldn't say it's difficult. Yeah, look, we like always, the governments, sometimes tough, because they get all the priorities as well. But look, governments actually allocate some money to different things. We always would like, more zeros behind the money that they allocate. So that's fine. But but no, look, my theory is people might think it's naive, but if you imagine if you invest $1 billion, just number, okay. But if you really have a proper plan and invest $1 billion in innovation, so in just really working with the companies, it's sort of like being VC, venture capital. But so you're looking what the holes are, how to, okay, you need this person, yeah. But if you really do that, then seriously, it's probably 5 years from now or 10 years from now, it will pay for itself, and then from then on, you're going to start benefiting. It really, and I think that's what we talk a little bit about government's role, and my favorite example, and sorry, I have to. When I talk, I have to talk. So, but Holland is a great example. Holland and agriculture. I mean, the country is smaller than Tasmania. It's amazing, and this country was the agriculture was totally in disarray, and it was practically the government were deciding, are we going to let it die completely? Okay. Because we have really not much land, etc., and all of this is reclaim and all that. Are we going to just let it die and just start importing, or fortunately they have very strong sort of unions of farmers, and they decided actually no, let's apply the newest technology, and the result is they're actually using technology. They're one of the largest exporters of food. I mean, you could not believe it. How is this possible? This tiny country. I mean, they beating United States in many things, and I think they only second, I think, to United States when it comes to export of potatoes. But everything is done actually because of technology, the newest technology applied. They get, when we talked, remember when we were talking about vertical farming and indoor farming, etc. And all of a sudden, then what's happened is once you decide, or government decide, okay, let's do this. So you allocate some funding, so that attracts people like magnets. So now, we get so many people. Let's offer university courses. But instead of a little bit here, a little bit there, they created the largest university, so they get the most famous. So now, if you it's sort of like a Oxford, of agriculture. So if you want to go to then you go to Holland. So it's fantastic and that's what it takes, it just takes a vision and same thing, with Germany did, we were just talking about, Germany did with solar. Angela Merkel decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I was laughing that, I'm from Poland and Germany has, 7 days like Poland, sunny days, yet they leaders in solar technology. How is that possible? It's just vision, government vision saying, this is new technology coming. Are we going to stay? Are we going to take advantage of it? So Denmark is leading the world in wind energy. Yeah. So they're constructing actually wind turbines. Okay. And again, tiny countries. So sort of the same thing. I think Denmark also. I think they have 5 million people. So it's incredible. So it's like Sydney. So imagine smaller than Tasmania and population of Sydney, and they're leading the world actually in one wind turbine. So all it is just really looking what's coming. Okay, how can we position ourselves, and how can we take advantage as a country? And that's why we see, with Hydrogen Highway, it's tremendous opportunity for Australia and tremendous for Western Australia, because we can grab technology which does not really exist. The hydrogen trucks are developed as we speak right now. Now they're being built. So we can grab that technology and actually really become leaders in technology, because the manufacturers can come here and actually test the trucks. This is where you earn your stripes, sort of. Because if you can do this, if you can be a road train and pull 6 trailers behind you, then yes, you deserve to actually call yourself a trucking company.
Colleen, I know you and Peter get on famously and you work jointly on a lot of things, but for Regional Development Australia, is it challenging from your perspective trying to sort out all the innovation, all the noise around innovation in WA to find the really golden pieces that are worth putting the effort into? How do you do that?
No, I don't think it's that difficult, and I think it's when the perfect storm is created, and I think. For instance, with the energy metals in Lithium Valley, there's a huge opportunity, to take advantage of that. And that can work hand in hand with hydrogen in creating that new energy future. So, I think it's, for us, it's about not only writing the reports, and it's actually working with industry, getting everybody behind the initiative and making it happen. I know government sometimes struggles a little bit, and these things have not been on their radar. But I think there's enough energy behind, pardon the pun, to actually make them happen.
Peter, I'm very conscious of time. I know you're really, really busy. But people watching this must look at Peter and go, how the heck did he get Innovation Australia? How did you get here? What drove you? A bit of...
No, look, I always, I always like improving and and tinkling. I actually was involved with Adam, with the co-founder of Innovate Australia, Adam Osarian, who is an academic at Edith Cowan University. Very smart guy, and also
just won an award.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, also you're right. Yeah, this year he was actually 4 times in Innovator of the Year awards, but this time actually he won his category. So together with his team, and that was the team that worked with Professor Barry Marshall, who is our great Nobel laureate from Western Australia. So yeah, we run I was on the board. Adam was on the board of steering committee of innovation, Australian Innovation Council, and yeah. Then later I was running the organization, but we brought Lynn Bisley. So there are 2 people actually who were instrumental. Actually, one is Lynn Bisley, who was then our chief scientist, and we brought her as a patron of the organization. And the second one, so this is a very odd couple, because the second one is Rupert Murdoch. Although, no, seriously, it's a very odd couple, but it's probably nothing in common. But not that we brought Rupert Murdoch somewhere, but actually we put the proposal to the government, and I was making a pitch, and I wrote a big speech, and a friend of mine who runs Inventors Association actually in Victoria, he said, "Oh man, you have to watch this. There's Rupert Murdoch did a Lowy lecture." And he actually, I watched the video on YouTube, and I would recommend everybody to watch it. And it was a fantastic speech. It was actually all about innovation, and that was 2013, and it was really inspirational. So I actually used material from that, and in my speech, and actually, yeah, it worked, So yeah, like I said, very odd couple. So 2 main people, Lynn Bisley and Rupert Murdoch.
People watching, just really quickly,
Yeah.
they've heard about Innovate Australia, they want to come to these events, get involved. What's the best way of contacting or getting to these fantastic events that you do put on a regular basis? On
our website, so it's innovateaustralia.org. That's it, simple as that. Yeah. So.
Or you can search on Eventbrite. So,
absolutely,
yes.
Yeah. So if you put an Eventbrite, usually we do about 1 event a month. Okay, sometimes more often, but roughly 1 a month. So I think this was our 56th event. So it's very happy with that.
And Colleen, Regional Development Australia, Perth. How do people find more about what you guys are up to, and some of these fantastic reports that you guys are putting out as well, and really educating everyone on this future and the innovation progress we make?
Well, we've got a website, so it's rdaperth.org, nice and simple. And people can come and watch our YouTube channel. What a great conversation that was with Peter and his initiative, Hydrogen Highway. While I was in Hanover, I did meet with a company called ITM, and they do this really fantastic technology around standalone hydrogen fueling stations. Now, they do have a representative here in WA, but I had a chance to talk with the people in Europe. So let's have a listen to that conversation. Not going to believe this. What's behind me is a whole hydrogen fueling station. Okay, 4 of these have already been sent to Victoria, probably to deal with the 12 cars that they bought. But take a look at this little baby. It's a whole unit. And there's a rep already in Australia, and so he's going to get in touch with me. But this is a bit that's needed in order to make Hydrogen Highway happen.
The cost of the systems obviously change with size of system and the details of what the system is designed to do. So details of the project that you're looking at. So when we have a customer who's interested in carrying out a hydrogen project, we'd engage with that customer, find out all about their project, understand their requirements exactly, and then we'll go back to our base in Sheffield, pull together all the technical information we need, put together a technical and a commercial proposal, and then feed that back to the customer so we can have a full discussion about exactly what system we can offer and what would be best for their project.
So how long do they last? Is there like a guarantee or a warranty, or they go on for...
Our systems are designed to last for 20 years.
Yep.
The electrolyzer stack will be expected to need replacement once during that 20-year period.
Yep.
So providing that the recommended maintenance profile is followed, we expect that 20-year lifetime to be achievable easily.
Brilliant. And are you selling more and more of these?
Yeah, very big demand. So in the UK, for example, we currently have, I think, 7 refueling stations up and running using these products. We've got another 6 to be delivered this year. We've got a very large project we're running with Shell in Germany on their Rhineland refinery, and that's for a 10 megawatt electrolyzer.
Oh wow.
So that will be the world's largest PEM electrolyzer. So that's a really important project for us. It's really helped us develop our larger product offering and standardise our systems so we can manufacture more efficiently, and that helps with delivery times, it helps with cost reduction, and it also helps with reliability of our systems. So we've got very well developed technology that we've got lots of experience with. It's been interrogated huge amounts of detail by numerous customers, and it's something which we're very proud of.
So the big question that we often debate in Australia is it hydrogen or is it batteries? What do you think?
I think there's a space for both, and it completely depends on the application. Batteries have their benefits. If you need to store energy for short periods of time on small scales, batteries are fine. They're well suited to that. But the more energy you need to store and the longer you need to store that for, batteries become less and less suitable. And that's where hydrogen really has its advantages. So with a battery, once the battery is full, once it's accepted all the charge it can, you can't use it again until you've discharged that battery. If you want to double the capacity, you have to spend money on a second battery. The electrolyzer is just a converter. So the amount of energy it can store is completely dependent on the size of the storage vessel it's connected to. The storage vessels are really quite cheap in comparison to the electrolyser system, so that single electrolyser can continue to operate 24 hours a day. The only limiting factor is how big the storage vessel you've connected it to, and that can easily be added to meet the demands of your application.
So in shipping, I don't know if you're aware, I'm sure you're aware that ships have to reduce their sulfur content by January 1st, 2020. And I know they're starting to look at a whole range of options. Where do you think hydrogen fits in that picture?
I think hydrogen's got a really big future in shipping. There's numerous reasons why there's a need to move away from traditional fuels for shipping. Hydrogen is very well suited to fill that gap. Ships already running on LNG equipment. My understanding is that LNG equipment can be modified to run on hydrogen, and that could be quite a quick intermediate step towards full fuel cell power of ships, which I think is the long-term aim. So hydrogen I think is an ideal fuel for shipping, and it's an area we're seeing more and more interest in, hydrogen shipping, and I'm sure as time goes on we'll start to see more and more hydrogen shipping projects actually taking place.
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew.
No
really
problem.
Great meeting you.
Thanks
and thank
very
you for
much.
telling us about your wonderful piece of equipment here, which I think should have a place in Australia. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
How fantastic was that conversation with ITM and their hydrogen fueling stations? Hopefully we'll be seeing some of those around Australia and here in Western Australia as the hydrogen story continues to grow. Now we have a very special guest, Patrick Hartley from CSIRO. He's the research director for oil, gas, and fuels of their energy business unit. And he's going to tell us a little bit about this WA's renewable hydrogen strategy. So let's go talk to Patrick. We're here at CSIRO, and we're going to be talking to Patrick Hartley, who is the research director for oil, gas, and fuels. And we're going to be talking about hydrogen. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Colleen.
Welcome to our show.
Thanks very much.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do here at CSIRO.
Sure. So I'm a research director, what's called a research director in our energy business unit within CSIRO, and I look after a lot of research that's to do with our resources and also fuels like hydrogen.
Great. So there's a lot of talk lately about hydrogen, and there's been some discussion. I know some things are being done at the federal level and at the state level. What's happening in that space? Why is hydrogen all of a sudden so very important?
Yeah, well, I guess it's become very interesting to Australia in the last couple of years through a few pieces of work that we've been involved in and others have been involved in, highlighting the opportunity for hydrogen energy in Australia. And we're not alone in this. There is a lot going on internationally in hydrogen energy, both in our region and in Europe. And a lot of countries are looking at these opportunities and developing new technologies that can actually work with hydrogen.
So I understand that the state has a renewable hydrogen strategy as well, and I know that LNG's in that space. And yesterday was we had Alan Finkel here with CETA talking about hydrogen, and people are now bringing up these terms: green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, brown hydrogen. Mm-hmm. Where do you think for Western Australia with that strategy that we should go to?
Yeah, well, I think so. We actually worked with the state government on developing the strategy as well. So had a lot of input in there based on some of the work that we've done, and the opportunity for Western Australia is great. And so if you look at some of the natural strengths that the state has, things like land, things like renewable energy potential, so enormous amounts of solar energy hit Western Australia, and at the moment we're not really harnessing it completely. So there's lots of opportunity to integrate things like solar energy with hydrogen energy systems. So there's a lot of interest in looking at renewable resources for producing hydrogen, but at the same time there are tremendous fossil fuel resources in Australia, in Western Australia in particular, and that have been the foundation for economic growth for the state. Things like exporting LNG, as you mentioned, and so there's quite a lot of interest in looking at how hydrogen can be used with those systems, as long as fundamentally you can reduce the emissions from those sorts of resources.
And yesterday I heard a little bit about the interest, for instance, of Japan and Korea in hydrogen, that's the type of future that they want to go towards. So what do you think, do you think Australia will play a pivotal role in those types of talks and negotiations?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and part of the real excitement, I suppose, in Australia about this is the fact that markets like Japan have announced that they're really interested in becoming a market for hydrogen that could be produced in Australia. So obviously, again, if we have this tremendous potential to produce hydrogen, and you have a market that's available, within your region, then you've got many parts of what you need to establish an industry. So absolutely, the export market for hydrogen is something that's getting a lot of attention in Japan, Korea, and the region.
And so do you think it's going to be one of those situations because of the need to go into that style of future that LNG will probably be the first cab off the ranks in terms of producing hydrogen, and then it'll move into renewables? Or
I think I think they will probably happen in tandem. I think there'll be I think the desire to develop more renewable energy sources will continue to grow, and yet we've got this tremendous resource potential to produce hydrogen from fossil fuels as well. So I think there'll be a combination of the two. We'll be rolling out the renewable energy as fast as we can, but at the same time we can get to scale with fossil fuel resources, again, as long as we can find ways to mitigate the CO2 emissions that come from them.
Because there's a lot of countries, not just Japan and Korea, that are looking at divesting out of fossil fuels. I know a big, huge effort through the EU, and the impact that's happening in 84 days. They're going to have some new emissions targets coming out, so for automotives and for the shipping industry. And so looking at all these alternatives and the time frames, to actually divest out of the fossil fuels, I think it's a really exciting future for us. And how do you think Australia can capture as much of the pie as possible in terms of, because it includes batteries, it includes hydrogen, and I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of other things out there that we don't even know about. What do you think Australia might need to do in terms of capturing as much of that as possible?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question, and it's very challenging to develop huge industries in a country with a population as small as Australia is a major challenge. So I think it has to be done in partnership with international countries, and really attracting investment into major projects from those countries in partnership with Australian companies as well. Yeah.
Great. Do you think there's a lot of interest in companies from overseas wanting to look at Australia and looking at those partnerships?
Yes, absolutely. So we have Japanese companies in particular already in Australia, working in Australia to develop up some of these types of projects. And
it's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
We did an interview recently with Peter Kasprick, and he's the CEO of Innovate Australia, and he's just really been pushing on about Hydrogen Highway. And so those types of projects, what do you think about? You think there's possibilities there that?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, transport is one of the big opportunities for hydrogen. Fuel cell vehicles have been developed now, and countries like Japan and Korea are now really making them available for sale. And the major challenge to getting the uptake of those vehicles is infrastructure, particularly for refueling. And so really one of the challenges is to work out how do you roll out refueling infrastructure in a controlled and manageable way, and build both the vehicle vehicle fleets that will use the hydrogen and in tandem with the refueling infrastructure. And so things like corridors that Peter's proposing are being looked at in many parts of the world, where you can have a dedicated route which trucks can run up and down, and that allows you to build a hydrogen market, I guess, for that. So there are other models too, where people are talking about, and the national strategy in particular is talking a little bit more around hubs for hydrogen energy generation as well. So building markets in hub environments. So there are a number of different models, but they all have merit and are worth looking at. Great.
Now, RDA Perth last year released Lithium Valley, and that has caused an absolute sensation in terms of looking at batteries and the possibility, and everybody's talking EVs now and all kinds of things. What's been interesting in the conversation in terms of batteries and hydrogen is that people seem to be getting a little divided in terms that it's going to be only batteries, or is it going to be only hydrogen? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different answers to that. So there's no doubt electric vehicles, are at a greater stage of development globally. And as you said, things like the European initiatives are really going to drive the development of electric vehicle markets in particular. And the relative merits of hydrogen versus electric vehicles for passenger vehicles are not that great. They're actually fairly similar sorts of technologies, and because the electric vehicle infrastructure and vehicles that are available, they're probably going to be the first cabs off the rank, pardon the pun. But where hydrogen can really play a role, hydrogen vehicles in particular, is in larger vehicles where batteries face challenges because the weight of batteries that you need to really put on trucks is very large, and hydrogen can actually have a niche there. So I think the vehicle story will be one of consumer preference. People may choose hydrogen because they like the familiarity of the refueling type approach, and the vehicles themselves, let's face it, are a big driver of uptake. So for passenger vehicles, it'll just be a choice. But there may be places where, particularly in heavy vehicles, where hydrogen has a definitive advantage.
I do know with the new emissions targets, the sulfur targets from the International Maritime Organization, I think they're dropping down to 0.05%, which is a huge impact on shipping and a huge impact on the petroleum refining industry. So, and I know hydrogen is one of those things that they're looking at. LNG seems to be the first coming on board first. But are you guys looking at how hydrogen might be able to move into that space, into shipping?
Yeah, we're not the CSIRO, we're not, but at the moment, but we're certainly well aware of the opportunity, and there are many companies in the world that are looking at that. And as you say, there are various other low emissions fuels you can look at, like batteries would actually play a role there as well, as does LNG, but hydrogen certainly can play a role in shipping, and many people are looking at that.
So do you think I know at the end of the day it's about climate change and trying to reduce the carbon emissions and greenhouse gases and the whole bit, and we've got some pretty hefty targets, or you can see some hefty targets there in terms of moving to 2030 and the divestment out of fossil fuels. Do you think it's going to have the impact that everybody's hoping for?
The divestment of well, I think we're all various members of international treaties that are driving towards that emissions reduction piece. I think it's going to take time. Fundamentally, we have an energy system which is very large, and trying to reduce emissions from a sector that's been developed for many years is going to be tough. So it's going to be a long journey. So the faster the better, but it's going to take a while.
And so with the young people out in our audience. There's a lot of push now, young people standing up, talking about climate change, with Greta Thunberg, really being the big voice around all of this. What would you have to say to young people in terms of climate change in the future and things that CSIRO are doing, to assist with that?
Yeah, I'd say get involved. I think there are many ways that people can influence the future directions of society, and so getting involved in the political sphere, in the technology sphere, as we work. All of these things are going to contribute to the development of this new energy transition. So yes, I think the more hands the better, and young people should be really thinking about how they can contribute, because it is an exciting journey, and it's going to be a challenging journey, but there's lots of opportunity, I think.
Okay, well, thank you, Patrick. It's been really lovely speaking to you.
Could you give us both, maybe starting with yourself, Patrick, your background and how you actually ended up at CSIRO and ended up with hydrogen as your main area of interest?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's quite a long journey actually. So I really, you can probably tell from my accent, I started off my scientific career in the UK, and worked in biological sciences, in engineering sciences. Came to Australia for a short time, which turned into a long time very quickly, and so I've actually been in CSIRO now for 20 years, and I've moved across in different areas from manufacturing, and most recently for the last 10 years really in the energy business unit, energy environment. So yeah, I've relatively speaking been doing quite a few things over the years, which has been a great journey. But the energy sector is a fascinating place to work at the moment. There's no doubt about that. So I'm really enjoying the understanding the challenges and looking at the opportunities.
And yourself, Colleen, you had quite a diverse background. How did you end up at RDA and hydrogen as being one of the industries that you guys have actually picked on to expose and educate people on?
Yes, well, I grew up in the oil and gas sector when I was little, still involved in it a little bit to this day, and I'm pretty much kind of a generalist. I'm trying to find out exactly what it is I do, but I've been in Australia, same as you, for a very long time, and worked with the state development, one of the development commissions for about 9 years, was a CEO there, and now have been with RDA Perth for the past 7 years. And because our mandate is economic development, we're interested in those things that are going to drive new economies, that are going to create the business investment that will then deliver the jobs for our young people into the future.
So we're moving into hydrogen specifically. How did that influence you, or what influenced you to actually pursue that, both of you, to get into that actual sphere?
Look, I guess there's a number of different factors that played a role. So CSIRO made a strategic decision around about 2017 to put some new investment into the area because we could see what was going on in the world and the opportunity for Australia. That led me into work developing the National Hydrogen Roadmap that CSIRO put out last year, and also working with our Chief Scientist, Dr. Alan Finkel, on his work briefing the Coag Energy Council about the hydrogen opportunity. So it sort of all happened fairly quickly, but there was a lot going on in 2018, and there still is.
Yeah, and I guess for us, because we had released the Lithium Valley report last year, which was a lot of focus around batteries and battery manufacturing, we cannot have that conversation without the hydrogen conversation as well, because the things that we need to move into, they're going to be complementary with each other. Batteries are going to be an important part of our future, as well as hydrogen. So I think the technologies that we currently have are going to do us well, but I think we're going to find more technologies and more interesting things as we move towards a global push into a more renewable future. So the conversation has to be hand in hand.
So and we see technologies emerging, maybe not developed in the country of origin, but some countries are able to establish themselves as having a great influence in that particular. I mean, I'm thinking of the Americans and the .com, the only country that doesn't have to put the country prefix after the .com. And they didn't invent it, they just owned it. How do you see Australia as being able to be do you think we can be influential in this technology, and how do you see that emerging?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are a number of opportunities for hydrogen in Australia. Some of them are domestic, and as I've mentioned, some of them are around export. I think the opportunity for Australia to become a renewable energy export country is huge and pretty unique to Australia in many ways. But it is going to take time and effort to realise that opportunity. But there are some natural advantages for Australia in that.
What do you see the challenges for Australia being able to be influential and maintain that lead that we seem to be creeping ahead, or seem to have that edge over the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot about, so we talk in our national roadmap that I mentioned, we talk about the need to activate markets in Australia and overseas. So really it's about attracting that investment both domestically and from overseas to allow the industry to grow. And that's quite a big job just in itself.
Yeah, and I think Australia, it's peculiar how the world views Australia. First of all, they think it's way far away, it's remote, and in terms of those companies that need to come here and engage, I think there's just a perception, that because of that remoteness. And I think what we need to do as Australians is basically really highlight the fact of the resources that we've got, of the technologies that we've got. We need to be more proactive in terms of marketing ourselves to the rest of the world. And that's a role that RDA's been engaged in the past year. So we had gone to the EU Commission, had a really great conversation with them and their battery alliance, and went to Shanghai as well to look at what's there and see how we could possibly form better relationships. And in February we will be going to the US and presenting at a conference there, and basically try to tell the companies, doors open, we're open for business, come have a look and talk to us.
When we talk, I know transport came up, when you talk of transport, do you see Australia, because of our vast distances and harsh environments, as we can attract companies here to do actual testing for their engines and so forth they're going to use it? Do you see any opportunities there to attract companies to actually establish their bases within our country?
Yeah, I think you put your finger on it. The size of Australia, the reliance on vehicle transport, particularly for heavy vehicle transport, is particularly huge here, and so I would see that as an opportunity for attracting industries here. Yeah.
You travel a lot, Colleen. What is there a possibility from when you've talked, do people get interested in going, that could be an opportunity for a position for our company?
Yeah, I think in particular in the energy metal space and how everybody's referring to these resources now as critical raw materials, and a lot of discussion in the paper, and we've got the US and China talking, the EU trying to find their way forward. And I think people are now really starting to look to Australia, and in particular Western Australia, to establish those connections, because if they want to secure these futures, they've got to go further down the supply chain and have those conversations. And I think once here and realizing the benefits of what people once considered disadvantages in terms of the remoteness and the climate and all of these things, they're now becoming the benefit because we can deliver on some research and technologies that can address those issues that will continue to be into the future.
Now, for the young people coming through and looking for careers, how do you both see the careers opportunities developing in Australia in this industry specifically?
Well, I think you're looking at a new industry, so there are jobs right across sectors when you're developing new industries, from engineers, technologists, policy professionals, regulators, all manner of opportunities. I think so. Yeah, there's a lot in this for everyone, I think.
And are we building the infrastructure? Is government starting to put in place the pathways for that education within Australia? Do you know?
It's a great question. I'm not aware of what's going on in the educational space so much, but I think it's a good point, and I do know universities are thinking about it for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's a funny issue because they are emerging industries. There's a huge push for the STEM education with primary and secondary school, but the issue is that as people go through that, the job needs to be there as well. And I think we're in a really tight spot in terms of how we transition from creating the jobs, which requires the business investment, which requires the research, all of this stuff, to make sure that as those young people move through the education system, when they come out, there's a job. Because what's happening currently is that there are positions, but they're kind of few and far between because it is emerging, and so a number of young people are having to go elsewhere to actually find employment. Hopefully we can get them back, but yeah, I think it's an interesting space that we've got right now.
And I'm thinking of the National Hydrogen Roadmap that CSIRO put out. If you were to summarise it for people, the top 2 or 3 recommendations that it's focusing on to say this is a really clear direction for Australia, what would you say personally?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really make recommendations per se. What we highlighted was opportunities, and so the opportunities that we really highlighted in the roadmap were based on where can hydrogen have an impact, early on, as soon as possible, and so there are a number of ways of looking at that. But things like the vehicle opportunity is clearly there because the industry's already there, the vehicles are available, etc. So things like that opportunity and the cost of hydrogen that is required to make those real is approaching readiness now. So that's probably a key one to start with. But we see other things in things like remote area power systems, for instance. A huge opportunity for Australia with very many remote communities, mine sites that are off the grid. So the potential to use hydrogen in some of those and produce hydrogen at some of those places is another sort of attractive area, we think.
And your findings as you've been researching this, Colleen, the top 2 or 3 opportunities you see where Australia could really have an impact and an influence?
Well, I think electric vehicles is an area that we do not need to move into because I think that's pretty well wrapped up. But I think what Australia can offer in terms of research and technology is power storage, and that's a combination of both batteries and hydrogen. And you know, because we are remote and we have a single grid system, there's lots of things that we can do. And at the end of the day, all those electric vehicles that are being produced have got to be plugged in somewhere. So I think this is where Australia, and in particular Western Australia, will have its greatest strength, is in the power storage market of the future.
And I suppose just to wrap up, people watching this and going, this is fascinating, how do they get a copy of the National Hydrogen Roadmap?
It's straight off the web. It's all available on our internet site. So yeah, www.csiro.au. Just search CSIRO National Hydrogen Roadmap and you'll find it straight away.
And Colleen, the RDA Perth is doing lots of stories on this. How can they find RDA Perth and more information?
They can go to our website, which is www.rda.org. That's it. We shortened it. RDAperth.org, sorry.
Absolutely fantastic. Thanks for staying back and giving us that little behind the scenes, some personal commentary on it. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much.
And don't forget to subscribe.